So we got Pete Widin, also known as Oatpod. How's it going, man? How you doing?
Doing well. I've just been working on some new music this morning, and it's a cloudy, rainy day here in April here in Minnesota, so perfect day to get some stuff done.
I like that kind of fair weather. It kind of gets you in that creative mood.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, before we get into what we're going to get into, quick shout out to my friend Brian for sending me your way. I
Yeah.
owe him a lot because, you're a very interesting guy. You come from a very interesting musical as well as aesthetic background. As I've seen in that video which Brian sent me, you're you're in a blueberry farm. Is that correct? How did
Yep.
you get to that point of living in such a serene kind of environment?
Yeah, so I am also a naturalist and ecologist. So I have a degree in environmental science, and I actually have a landscape design business where I focus on helping people to create like healthy farms and plant prairies for pollinators and like butterflies and bees and all that kind of warm, fuzzy, earth-friendly stuff. So I gave a talk on how to plant more flowers and habitat in people's yards, and that's where I met the woman who owns that blueberry farm. So that's how I ended up there, and I get my inspiration from being out in nature. So I'm just gonna plug in my headphones here. Maybe it'll get a little better sound too. But and so this farm, it's like 20 acres. It's just the perfect setting. There's some ponds, there's bald eagles, there's sandhill cranes and hawks and songbirds and stuff. So it's just a perfect setting to make music.
It's really awesome, man. I mean, to say it's awesome is an understatement, and considering your background, I mean, that just made it 10 times cooler in a way. And
Thank you.
as kind of explained in the video, um, you have, what was it? Was it, I can't remember if it was a guitar or a sitar, but you had that as well as a canoe. And you said that those are your two main passions in life. And like branching off of that, being in the outdoors kind of environment, does that allow you to catalyze your musical ideas at like a much faster rate sometimes?
Yeah, I would say yes. I was actually just listening to this book. It reminds me of another kind of piece behind that. There's a book by Rick Rubin, the music producer.
Oh
I
yeah,
for
legend.
what's that?
He's a legend.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And offhand, I can't remember the name of the book, but it just came out. And it's just about the creative process and kind of taking this Zen-like approach of simplifying kind of how to break out of the box in terms of the way we see and hear and sense things to really open up our creativity. And so one of the things he talked about is that, for example, some people will like if they're writing lyrics to a song, they might decide to go on a long drive in their car because part of their mind is focused, like that kind of surface level mind is focused on driving the car, but then it kind of frees up their more subconscious layers of the mind to just like let inspiration through rather than some people might overthink things and then that blocks them.
That's true.
And so, when I'm out in nature, there's my attention and my senses are all just like very gently stimulated. And I feel at home outside. I mean, my mom, like growing up, I would be outside all the time and camping and just like digging around in ant hills and just like that type of setting of being out in the woods or next to a lake or something is so innate for me and who I am. And so that's my most relaxed state. So I get a lot of song ideas when I'm out in nature. I might just be watching something like watching the leaves in the trees, or just even out in the vegetable garden, something like that. But also then I get a ton of song ideas from dreams as well. So I'll have people playing fully arranged songs to me in dreams, like this song Sense of Place. That is how Brian and I met. He had heard that song. um Cat Stevens was in a dream of mine, and he was playing a song to me in a coffee shop, and so I woke up, and I've gotten good at being able to sense if I'm awake and I'm outside or wherever I am. If I'm asleep and I have an idea, like a musical idea come to me, I've gotten really good at sensing when that's happening. So if I'm asleep, I'll often wake up and then write it down, or come up with chords that sound similar to what I was hearing, because I'm still actually, even after 20 years of playing guitar, I'm still kind of figuring out how to make the sounds I want to hear. But anyway, so that just like relaxed state of mind, if I'm outside or if I'm like falling asleep or actually dreaming, that's when the ideas just kind of flow.
That's really cool. And you mentioned sense of place was what kind of drove that connection. I remember seeing, like, going back to your posts, and sense of place actually got some radio play in Australia. And
It did, yeah.
how was that for you?
That was so cool. I was actually just thinking about that the other day, and I didn't actually ask the guy how he even found my song, but it was so cool. I mean, it's an example of how we never really know, kind of, we create art, or like, for example, I'll create music and I never really know what it's going to do once it's out there in the world, and what kind of life it'll take on once other people hear it. And it was such an empowering and encouraging thing to have that happen so randomly. I didn't try, I wasn't sending messages out to radio stations being like, hey, play my song. I didn't do any of that. And all of a sudden
Wow.
it's, somebody had picked it up and they liked it enough to put it on their show. So that was just an amazing experience. I think that happened a month or so ago.
Yeah, and it's really cool how those kind of opportunities turn out when you don't even ask for them. And
Hmm.
I mean, getting back into your creative process as far as like how it was initially catalyzed. Take me back a little bit more into your childhood, and you've explained the environmental aspects of it being out in nature, and that's very much akin to how you are right now. But as far as musical influences when you were a kid, what was like the first band, the first album, the first bunch of songs, if you will, to really get you going in that direction?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. So there's like a few kind of milestone points throughout my childhood where there were significant experiences in that way. And the first was on Easter morning. I used to get an Easter basket like a lot of Christian kids, and um when
Of
I was about
course.
six, what's that?
Of course. Yeah,
Yeah, right.
I
You
remember
know,
that too.
jelly beans and all that
Who
stuff. And
doesn't?
yeah, yeah. So when I was about 6 years old, my parents had put a Beach Boys greatest hits cassette tape in my Easter basket, and it was brand new. And I took the wrapping off, and then I remember, I started to play it, and then I remember I think my parents had some friends over for dinner one night, and I'm out in my room after dinner because they were, sitting and talking, boring adult stuff when you're 6 years old. So I was in my room, and I think I had like a nightlight on, and so there's like this kind of mood lighting going on. And I remember the song, I think it's called In My Room by the Beach Boys. There's a world where I can go and tell my secrets to in my room. And so I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh my God, like I'm in my room. This song is
So
incredible.
it's so poignant, so it makes sense at that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a wonderful song. And I think I know that I still really resonate with that type of connection between a song and the actual experience of a certain setting that I might be in.
Right.
If people are like, let's say at a music festival and there's like this cool kind of mystical lighting and there's music happening, it's that kind of same experience. So I carry those memories and that desire to have similar experiences of this kind of like setting and lighting. And I still use that a lot when I'm creating music these days. Of I might I might have like Lord of the Rings on the TV without the sound on in the background while I'm writing songs or whatever. It's just like these settings and these moods are so influential. But then in my childhood as well, my dad is obsessed with the Beatles.
Hmm.
And so I was just like all of the Beatles albums, and he had the anthology as well, which is all of these outtakes from all the Beatles, from like 1964 through 69 or whatever. Um, Various studio outtakes and alternative versions of songs. So getting really deep into understanding the process of songwriting and recording in the studio as well. When I was in junior high and high school, I really kind of got more into that aspect of it. It's like, oh, the final song I heard wasn't always just like the first version straight out the gate. That's pretty interesting. And then I was also in a cover band in junior high where I really wanted to be in this band, and I tried out to be the drummer because I'm also a drummer. At that time, I wasn't very good at drumming. I was maybe 13, and I didn't make it as the drummer, which was fine, but they asked me to be the singer. And they said, well, one of the first songs we want you to learn is called Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin. And I had no idea who Led Zeppelin was. And so I went home and I told my dad, I was like, hey, I got into this band and they want me to learn this song called Stairway to Heaven. He was like, oh my, because I didn't know what it was. And he was like, okay, let's introduce you to Stairway to Heaven. And he happened to have it on vinyl. And so it was just an incredible experience there. My dad had these great big kind of audiophile stereo speakers and stuff. And so that was a really amazing thing. And we used to play that cover band in junior high and high school, would play for like birthday parties and we'd play at bars and stuff. So we did a lot of live shows.
Yeah, I gotta say, like, everyone knows how demanding Stairway to Heaven is on guitar, but as a
Right.
singer,
Right.
especially like getting like just barely accustomed to that role,
I
that
know.
must have been like quite a challenge.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was. And I definitely attribute having learned, because we played a lot of Led Zeppelin songs. Like we I don't know if you're familiar with their like deeper catalog, but
Yeah, yeah,
the song The Ocean, it's like down, down the back my back. It's like way up there
yeah,
in the register. But learning all those songs like Black Dog, Whole Lot of Love, etc., it's like I really learned how to be able to control my falsetto, so my upper register of my voice
right,
really well. And I've I was in church choirs and concert choirs from age 9 until 21, and so I also knew how to sing in various keys. I knew how to what kind of work with harmony and some of the more nuanced aspects of like using the voice as an instrument. So yeah, I do remember it being a challenge, especially as a 14-year-old kid to try and sound like a 21-year-old Robert Plant who's
of
just belting
course.
things. So, but that was really the start for me of being able to kind of form those grooves as far in my voice as far as like what my real vocal sound and character is. Because I could hear, I could tell eventually that's like, okay, somebody like Robert Plant or Roger Daltrey from The Who. We were a classic rock cover band, and so we were playing all that like Hendrix, The Who, and Zeppelin. And I started to realize, oh, like some aspects of these people's singing is actually their natural voice. And some of
Hmm.
that I can't necessarily do. So I've got to kind of find my own way that people still like. It still sounds enough like this kind of classic sound that you'd people have come to know and love, yet it's also got I can actually sing it naturally without hurting my voice. And so that really helped me start to develop my own vocal sound too.
Hmm. And you've definitely you've definitely have become a lot more accomplished, um, instrumental wise, and as you've told me, as a singer. And in terms of songwriting, last year you participated in SongCon,
Yeah.
and I know that there's an in-person event and a virtual event. Which did you attend?
So I attended virtually, and I guess I don't know if they were doing another one this year. I didn't hear much about it, but it was a really wonderful event last year. It was the first ever annual SongCon event, and so that's something that is held was held by Ari Herstand, and unfortunately, I'm forgetting the name of the New York-based producer who also helped run it. But
There was Mike Grubbs. I know that name comes up.
Mike Grubbs was part of that. He was a kind of a supporting producer, so he actually helped my specific group. It was like a group. We broke up into groups of 4 and 5 people. There was probably, I think, 100 attendees total between the in-person and virtual sides of the event. Some people met in New York City. Some people were on Zoom. So I was on Zoom, and Mike helped our group of 5 people to write a song and produce it, like record it and produce it within about 24 hours. So it was a whirlwind. And I mean, I'm sure you have a good idea of what it takes to record and produce a song to the point of being able to actually release it. But that's basically what we were doing, is get a, like a pretty final draft of a song done so it could be reviewed by a panel of judges in a day. So yeah, it was just an amazing experience. There was a really wonderful producer from New York named Tiger. It's been a while, so unfortunately I can't remember some of the exact names. I'd have to look up their names, but she was really, or they, I'm not sure what her pronoun is, but they were really helpful. Tiger was so helpful with, um, they walked through, like, these various producers would walk through their process with us. Like, they'd open up their digital audio workstation like Logic Pro or Pro Tools on Zoom with us and show us, like, here's how I layer vocals and create harmonies, and here's the type of microphones I like to use, and here's how I think about structuring a song and stuff. And it was just so cool to see that process. So that's really inspired me with some of the harmonies that I've created, and for example, How Much Better, the song that I shared with you, that's about to be released pretty soon. And like I said, I was in choirs growing up, and so being able to layer harmonies is super fun.
Yeah. So on your own, production has been a lot of trial and error, of course.
Yeah.
And with people like Mike and the others that you mentioned, did that give you sort of a better sensibility about your music? Like, I thought I knew where I was gonna go, and now with the help of these guys, now I know where I really want to go.
Yeah, that's a really cool question. I would say part of it is that that experience was really validating for me to be selected. I think there was like 800 people that applied, and I was one of 100 who were invited to take part in that. So that was an honor, and just very validating, because as an artist in general, but as a musician for sure, it's like you never really know. It's like, I love my music, but we really need that we need to experience and like see, like, what is the feedback here? Is this actually good? Is what I'm creating resonating with anybody? Um, but yeah, it definitely filled in a number of gaps for me, and also just really helped me see, it's like, being a producing and recording music is a lot of trial and error. Even if find a great mentor, finding a great mentor can just fast track things so exponentially. But um I've really found that being open to the process of creating, and knowing that even if, like, a vocal take or a drum part that I've recorded, if it doesn't sound quite right, it's really just such an iterative process. And so kind of letting go of the idea that, okay, by the end of today, I need to be done with this thing. It's like, maybe I will be, maybe I won't. Maybe I'll have another idea that'll take me in a different direction. for example, if I'm trying to get like the right vocals and the timing down and the pitch and whatever, it's like,
Even during the rendering process, you're like, oh, here's another way.
yeah, yeah. So it's really about for me kind of riding that ebb and flow. Like if I'm feeling really frustrated, I'll just set it down. I'll set that song down, for example, come back the next day or in a, whenever I've got some space again. But the people who, from what I've gleaned from the world of professional music, it's, the people who just continue to show up. It's like, if you will find the way through and you will find some some semblance of um I guess fulfillment of actually creating that piece of music, for example. So that's really what it taught me. It's just like, show up and trust your gut. And that's really how to make unique music that is kind of like pushing the boundaries of what's been done before.
The interesting thing is that you've shared the rough cut of your song with me. The song is How Much Better. And then with this song you have currently out now, Extinguish. Uh, for those who are unaware, it's xtngwsh. With that song, they sort of complement each other by employing the same kind of musical principles and
Mm,
taking advantage of space and also like harmony rather than just strictly melody. And
mm,
with this song Extinguish, this is you made a point to say that this was actually your first like real song where you went like all out and
hmm.
I guess applied what you learned. So tell me about it, the process essentially coming full circle for you.
Yeah, I really appreciate your questions too, Jacob. And sorry, do you prefer Jacob or Jake?
I'm Jake.
Okay,
Jake the
okay, Jake.
My YouTube name is Jake the Man.
All
So
right, perfect.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I just love your questions and the background research that you've done. It's makes this so fun to do this interview. So yeah, man, Extinguish, it's by no means the first song I've written, but like you said, it's the first one where I really went all out. And so I play drums, bass, guitar, I sing, I play keyboards and synthesizers, which is all done. The keyboards and synths are all done with a little 25 key Akai USB keyboard. So I'm like kind of, you know,
Yeah, and as you see behind me, I have like a keyboard.
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm doing that all right now. I'm doing it on a little keyboard, but it's helped me to really learn um where I want to take things as far as um having some limitations has been really an interesting opportunity for me to see how far I can push the tools that I have before I might upgrade some of my equipment. And for Extinguish, you know, I really just let myself run as far as the structure of the song. Like the structure of that song is just based on these bass guitar phrases. So I don't know if you're familiar with Jaco Pastorius, but it's
Of
just
course.
based.
Yeah.
Cool, yeah. So it's just like I watched a documentary on him on Netflix, I think, and I was just really inspired, and I wanted to dive deep into ex really exploring how I could get the kind of perfect touch and perfect tone that I heard in my head and play that out on the bass. And so I actually recorded that entire song on the bass first, basically, and no pun intended, I guess, whatever. Basically, yeah.
Basically.
And I actually recorded that entire bass part. The bass part goes for the whole song. Yeah, I did it two measures at a time. because I didn't I still to memorize a whole song like that I could probably do it, but I don't actually know scales or anything on the bass.
Right.
And so I was just going 2 bars at a time for the whole song. I'd record one set of 2 bars and then move on. But then I would just hear certain parts. Like I probably worked on that song over the course of maybe 6 months in terms of the main structure and arrangement of it. Not consistently every day, but I'd have different ideas come as I continued to listen to it, and then I'd refine certain sounds, and I mixed and mastered that myself as well, for what it's worth. And man, it was just such a cool experience. I remember I still have a picture of I had my little 25 key Akai keyboard, and I had this tiny, like 3 foot tall Christmas tree in December it was like December of 2020. I don't even know. Probably 2020. And I there was that thing that comes around again, like when I talk about that Beach Boys thing when I was a kid, of like in my room with this cool setting and this cool lighting. I just had the lights of the Christmas tree on with nothing else in the room. It was all dark, and I was just messing around with these synthesizer sounds in Logic Pro on my computer. And so there's these little flute sounds toward the beginning of the song that I was doing at that point, and just
Right.
really the kind of weird, eerie harmonies.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I just had so much fun with that. There's other songs that I've written and will be continuing to release that are more kind of simple, straightforward rock or folk. And then there's kind of more deeper electronic stuff. And um, yeah, it was a real joy to create that song, and a real lesson in that turn. Like I talk about songs being an iterative thing, a real lesson in patience too. Like I realized that in order to get the right drum part to really give that song this kind of rhythmic emphasis and kind of framework that I wanted with the drums, I needed to write out the notation for the drum part. So I actually did that, and luckily I'd taken a lot of like 7 years of drum lessons growing up, so I knew how to write out drum notation. But I was still pouring through old books and like, oh, here's how I write the hi-hat, and here's how I write the
Always need a
toms.
refresher every once in a while.
Yeah, but and it was so fun to write that out, and also realize that it's like it didn't actually take that long to do that. If
Right.
I just gave myself the space to, like, okay, I've got an hour, I'm just going to
Just
focus.
buckle down and just do it.
Yeah, exactly. So one one of the main reasons I've decided to take my music um very seriously in a professional way is because I've also found that the process of creating music and recording, etc., is one of the most healing things that I've found for my own life journey, like mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, to really be able to trust my gut, trust my intuition, to be able to just move forward when I might be feeling doubtful. And there's all this stuff that has really just been music's just been a really great catalyst for my own personal growth. And so that song's a great example of that.
In another sense, when it comes to taking your music to this next level, you definitely have found a way to market yourself with
Yeah.
Oatpod, and people
Yeah.
thinking like, wow, that's rather organic sounding. And then there's this image of like serenity and greenery. And then you
Hmm.
listen to the music and it's all this like spacious folk, but with an edge that kind of bites you like when you're not like when you're not aware. It has that hidden bite to it, and that's really cool when you consider everything together. Now I noticed that I mean my sources for finding your info were consisted of Facebook and your LinkedIn page,
Okay.
and I noticed that uh, there was a full length also in the works going on. Talking Rocks, was that related to this process or was that a separate thing?
So it is related to this. So that's interesting. Yeah, Talking Rocks is all of the songs that there's like such a long story, but I'll try to like do it in a condensed sequential way. So it's like about 2.5 years ago, I started getting into sync licensing. So it's like licensing your songs for TV and film. So, somebody has a song at the end of the Black Panther movie, for example, that would be a sync license to place that song. And so it's a potential way to earn some income from original music. And so I had made this album called Talking Rocks, which Extinguish was going to be on. And what I realized, so I started recording that. Extinguish was the first song I started recording for that album, which has about 10 songs on it. And but I haven't released all of the songs yet because in about 2019, 2020 was when I really started to learn how to actually record myself at home. Before then, I'd done a few songs. There's another band that I had with some friends called Empty Altars. Empty like an empty space, and then altars like a church altar, empty altars. And we have about 3 songs, actually a few more than that on Spotify or other streaming services that people can listen to. We've got some YouTube videos as well, from about like 2018 and 19. And we had hired some local studios to record a couple songs for us, which turned out really well. And then I had recorded a 5-song EP, just a shorter album for us, with a very rudimentary setup. And that process of recording that EP and then recording the songs at my own house for Talking Rocks, I realized that while the songs were like the arrangements and the performances were fully thought out and pretty good quality, there's still some timing issues and stuff, which like that's a whole nother animal in terms of making sure things like have a really tight feel and time if that's the intention in a song. That can be difficult to get. That's an iterative process too. But anyway, so I made that album and then I realized, oh, my recording quality is like not up to par as far as like really, professional level that I could really stand by the quality and say like, yeah, this can stand the test of time. I'm really I in terms of like being able to get those songs placed in TV and film, releasing them on Spotify and having them sound good in a car and on headphones. It's like it takes a lot
You
of
always see those ads on Facebook that's like, this is how it sounds on your computer.
right.
This is
Yep.
how it sounds in your car, and it sounds like absolute shit.
Right. Yes. Yeah, yeah, dude. I had no idea when I started recording. I mean, I had recorded some stuff in high school. I'm 35 now, and I knew that stuff like I knew even at that point that I could record something and it wouldn't sound like a polished record when I was first playing it back. It takes mixing and EQing the frequencies of the voice to make sure they sound, natural and aren't harsh on the ears and stuff. It's just crazy like how much goes into creating a finished marketable produced song. So anyway, that Talking Rocks album, those songs will continue to be released, but probably not as the Talking Rocks album. I guess we'll see how that all pans out. But I'm in the process of just working through those songs and fixing the pieces that need to be fixed. Like, oh, this guitar has too much echo on it from the untreated room I recorded it in 2020. I need to re-record that or whatever. And so
Yeah.
that's part of that personal growth process too. It's like realizing that, well, maybe this song actually is totally ready to release, or maybe I can just be very strategic as far as, oh, I'll just update these couple parts and then, then we're ready to release it. But I, man,
When it
I
comes to
write,
like, yeah, sorry, you're
I was
gonna
just gonna
finish point.
say, go on. Yeah, yeah. I was just gonna say I write so many songs though that I'm really getting to this point of like I'm really glad that I'm now in 2023 at a point where I can generally like I'm pretty good at engineering in terms of using microphones to record my voice and getting the sounds I want pretty quickly. So I'm moving a lot faster these days,
Hmm.
getting music together.
And I wanted to say that, when I started writing songs as a teenager, I'm 32 myself.
Mm,
When I started writing songs, I had this kind of defeatist outlook. Like, my older, cringier songs are just gonna stay that way. And, like, and so I started deleting, like this was like 2004 or something, when I was on Acid Planet.
sure.
The whole SoundClick and those kinds of sites. When I was on there, I would start deleting the songs with my vocals, on there, because I thought they were cringy.
Mm,
And it was a similar kind of thing where I was like, nah, that's not good. Or I would create songs and then say, like, I'm so much better now. I should just push the much better songs. But then I thought about it and I was like, I'm basically like deleting my legacy.
I
If
know.
I
Yeah.
delete my older songs, or if
Right.
I like kind of if I was in a band and I kind of distance myself from another band, regardless of the drama that we had, there's gonna be people who are looking for this stuff. And like, if I
Right.
don't have it, I'm screwed.
Yep.
So I was wondering, I was getting to the point of like, how do you feel about your older stuff and sort of having it out for posterity, in relation to your current stuff? Do they
Hmm.
eventually hold equal merit, even if your older stuff isn't as up to par as you'd like it to be?
I love that question. It's really important to like I hear from some musicians, for example, like Pharrell Williams, I believe, who like, they might not look back at all and just like keep moving forward, which I don't think there's any one right perspective on our artistic process or music, but I personally really enjoy looking back because I have great memories on creating those, like writing those songs. Like I used to go over to my buddy Darren's place and I used to sleep on the studio floor. Like we'd do a sleepover for the weekend and write music. And I'd be sleeping on this dusty floor next to all the guitars and stuff. And it was just a great time. Um, and so there's a lot of sentimental value to those songs. And the EP that I recorded with the band Empty Altars with my friends, that's still up on Spotify. And as far as like it is very tinny sounding, it's very thin sounding, and it's not professionally produced. It's an amateur recording. But I really look back on those times, and I think that's part of the personal growth aspect of my music journey, and maybe any of our journeys is like being able to listen to that and then kind of embrace the imperfection. I think it's a really healing experience to have. And so I don't think there's anything that I've put up that I've deleted. Um, and that is to say it's anyone's individual decision whether they do or don't leave stuff up, but I also think it's a cool kind of breadcrumb trail for other people who might discover our music in the future to follow, especially maybe somebody younger or somebody who's not as far along their own music path, to really see like, oh wow, this person is here now, but here's where they started. Oh, that's a little closer to where I am too. And I know for in my own journeys and still today, I really benefit from seeing where other successful artists, musicians, business people of any background have come from, because it's so, it really brings things down to earth. It's like everyone's human and everyone starts from, zero basically. Um, Even Paul McCartney and John Lennon, there was a time where they hadn't written a song.
Yeah.
And, so yeah, everybody starts with a pretty humble beginning as far as their catalog of work, and so and ability to really bring their ideas to the physical world, which is like a whole. It's so crazy, right? Like we have an idea, and then actually to make, like, I might have a dream where I have a song playing in my head, and for so long I would just stop in my own. I would stop myself in my tracks because I'd start recording it. And I was like, dude, I'm so far away from what this sounds like in my head. But seeing where I came from in 2018 with that EP and where I'm at now, yeah, granted it's been 4 or 5 years, but the people I've met, like talking to you right now, is like, this is fantastic. Like I'm, the fact that I showed up consistently to create music, and that, you know, you and I can connect about our music journey because I stuck with it. Like we wouldn't have met if I had given up, right? So, um, it's just really cool to see, like, okay, this is anyway. So no, I don't delete my old stuff.
Yeah, that's the short end of it.
Yeah.
So getting back to extinguish and getting back to the rough cut of your upcoming song, How Much Better, that you sent me now.
Mhm.
When it comes to those batch of songs, are they going to be part of another full length that definitely shows the extent of your growth to this point?
Um, I think it's a great question. I've really am, like, currently I'm kind of working through whether I'm going to be releasing albums or just singles. And the main reason is that I'm petting my dog here off to the side. The
Yeah,
the
off
main
screen pet dog.
right, yeah. The main thing about that, in terms of whether not knowing whether I'm releasing albums or singles, is because I've written so many songs over the last 20 years that it's by no means am I gonna record them all, because that would be a fairly impossible feat. There's so many of them, but there are certain groups of songs that have a similar kind of vibe and similar instrumentation. I think the main thing for me is, do I want to force myself, um, maybe not force myself, but do I want to focus on just like a set of these more folk rock songs? Do I want to focus on this other set of more kind of electronic type of pop oriented stuff? And most of the stuff I write is folk and rock. So I think for me, I'm just really not sure, as the artist Oatpod, if I'm releasing like, if I release an album that's just like, these are the songs I want to do right now, I guess I have to decide if I care if people are like, what the heck are these songs doing together on an album? Or if I want to be more intentional about that and be like, this is a real kind of a crafted experience. Um, so yeah, it's a kind of an open-ended area for me in terms of how I release stuff, but in terms of the number of songs that I'll be releasing is going to continue increasing over the next few months and years.
Oh, that's good. And yeah, I'm glad. So you're going to, in other words, you're going to continue with the periodic monthly releasing of songs.
Yep.
Um, After this one is so this this new song that you sent me right now, that's come going to come out soon.
Yeah, it is. So the interesting thing is that I could literally release it tomorrow. But for example, if somebody wants to get a song on Spotify editorial playlists, or at least gets considered for one, you have to wait like 3 or 4 weeks. So it's one of those things where I'm not all about playing the Spotify game. It's not a huge deal to me. But one thing that I do is that for people who have joined the Oatpod email list, which is something that people often find me through Facebook ads, and I'm in the process of getting an actual like physical website up that people could visit. But right now it's go.petewiden.com slash streaming is a way for people to start to explore my music. But um I'll be sharing how much better like the final version of it with my email list before it's out on like streaming platforms. So people who are kind of part of that inner circle get to hear stuff sooner.
All right. Yeah, and it's good. And how was it gonna? Oh yeah. So one of the things that stuck out to me, though, getting back into the artistic process, was you shared on your Facebook. It was a thing of a frustrating experience in Logic where one of
Yeah.
your tracks got corrupted, and I
Yeah.
was like, oh my god, I relate to that so
Oh
much
yeah.
because you're in the midst of like writing, recording a song, it's going great, but
Yep.
then you get like the cursor wheel, and it's like,
Yep.
what? Wait, what's happening? And then
Yeah.
the window like grays out, and you're like, mother of, and then it says like this program stopped working, and then
Right.
you're like, wait, okay, okay, and then it says your last project was unsaved, and then you open the project, and then you see the the file that you were just recording before the thing corrupted, but then you see like the wavelength, and it's all like sticks and lines, and it's
Oh
like,
yeah.
and when you play it back, it goes like, it's I was thinking of how to address, yeah, exactly. I was thinking of how to address this in our interview.
Oh
Like when I would get one of those corrupted files, it would sound like, like when you turn on a burner, like
yes. Yes.
it sounds like a circuit bent burner. It
Yes.
sounds like, and you're
Yeah.
like, how in the
I can't
this?
release this.
So like, how do you like? I guess how do you like contain yourself in those moments?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. And in the video that I shared, what has happened sometimes is that if I have a MIDI file, like a synthesizer, that has MIDI points, then Logic sometimes can't read that if I have like a guitar or vocal that's just like a regular sound wave. And it's usually a temporary issue, but one thing is that I think there's like a setting in Logic where it auto saves stuff every certain amount of time. So that helps a lot. And I save like super frequently. Every minute or so, I just command save. So that helps for sure. But I also back up my stuff. So I've got my songs on my main computer, and then they all back up to Google Drive like every time I save something. So
Smart. That's smart.
thanks. Yeah, I have a friend who does like IT security, and he was just saying like have your stuff in multiple locations, like in case your house burns down or in case your computer dies or whatever. And I had actually lost, I don't remember what song it was, but I lost like a full, oh, it was actually for, I do landscape design. I have a business doing that as well. And I lost a whole design I had to redo one time. So I didn't want to ever have that happen again. But anyway, so that helps buffer that emotional shock. And it's really interesting. Like I've found that I don't remember the last time, knock on wood, that I had that happen in terms of like really losing audio and like losing a track where it wouldn't work and I couldn't find, I couldn't just close and reopen it or restart my computer or something. I did invest in an upgraded computer. I'm working on this like a 2019 MacBook Pro now. I was on a 2015 up until last year, and that was getting
Yeah.
pretty that was getting pretty slow for my needs because I can sometimes do some CPU heavy stuff with plugins and effects and things. But yeah, so I try not to, you know, if something like that happens, I'm kind of giving the process the benefit of the doubt and the computer the benefit of the doubt until I know that, if I realize that, oh, something's really lost based on my kind of like fail safe saving multiple copies of the files, it generally takes care of that risk, which is really great.
Hmm. Considering your musical journey up to this point and everything you've done, what have you learned about yourself, both as a musician and as a person?
I think the most important thing I've learned about myself is that a couple things. One is that since I have the inspiration, that is enough to validate me being a professional musician. There was a like when I was 18, I wanted to just do music. I didn't want to even go to college. And my parents said I had to go to college, and they also said that I couldn't go to school for music because it wasn't a good career choice. And so I had that kind of ingrained in me, which was unfortunate, but that's something I've really grown through is really understanding that I can trust my inspiration to like, since I have certain dreams, I have certain inspirations, that is enough of a valid reason to follow them. I don't need outside, permission to do that. So I've really taken that to heart. And also that as any of us continue on down a path of our own choosing, I think one thing I've learned is that to as high a degree as possible while still keeping my feet grounded in reality is like leaning in and diving in fully and taking some calculated risks and taking chances. Like for me, um even spending a full day on music versus working on a landscape design or something that it might bring in more immediate income potential. Even working on music for a full day is an act of, self-actualization and almost defiance for me because, in our modern age, it's so easy to think, it's so easy to kind of get lost in the idea of, oh, I should just have a secure 9 to 5 job and, matching retirement benefits and all that type of stuff. And I think that's great for people who want that, but even though security, like financial security is nice, it doesn't mean that a life in music is devoid of financial abundance and security. And so from a spiritual perspective, I have just grown tremendously since I started following this path of professional musicianship because for me at least, it takes a tremendous amount of belief in myself to say I have these ideas, I know they're good, and I'm going to see them through to actually completing them. And that brings me to the probably the third most important thing that I've learned in this process, about myself, is that I have really been a kind of mm, just a really hardcore perfectionist. And so I'd think like, for example, like, oh, this song's not sounding the way I wanted it to. That's the way it sounds in my head. Or like, I don't know how to do this. This is too frustrating. I'm going to give up. And so, I've got songs. I'm putting together about 20 songs right now that I'm registering with the U.S. Copyright Office because I'm going to release them soon over the next, maybe year as I finish them up. But a lot of them are almost done. Like the whole arrangements there, they just need to be touched up. And I've sat on so many of those songs because I didn't actually have the skills necessarily to mix and master them on my own, because mixing and mastering, I just didn't have the money to hire that out. And I also tried to hire it out, and the mixes I was getting back just wasn't what I wanted. It wasn't what I hear in my head. And that's who I am as a musician. I know what I want. And so, yeah, I just learned like it is a step-by-step process to like, here's the next thing I'm learning, here's the next thing I'm learning. And it really is all about the journey. It really is all about just doing the thing today and finding those kind of Jenga blocks that are loose enough today to be able to kind of push and pull those levers or whatever, those bricks in the wall that I can move, and then see tomorrow which ones I can move next, and so on, rather than trying to exert brute force and trying to force things to happen in certain ways. So yeah, it's and I think the final thing that I would really want to share with anyone else who's following a creative path is like, for me, learning how to budget my money and live in a financially frugal way has really helped me to be able to have a little bit of extra time and just really ultimately extra mental space, to be able to focus on my art and know that even though I might make, half of what a lot right now, even though I might make half of what some people who have a full-time 9 to 5, professional job are making, it doesn't mean I'm any less capable of being a tremendous success, as in terms of how I apply myself and focus on my art. And um I'm just as intelligent, I'm just as capable as anyone else. I'm just choosing to be on the path I'm on now. And with music, generally, there is to some degree a kind of waiting period where we're building our abilities, we're building our catalog, we're building our connections, and then things kind of organically grow from there. I think that's been a profound realization for me, and having the patience to just keep going and know that that fulfillment comes, from as an outgrowth of that step by step, day by day process.
It's really well said. And lastly,
Thanks.
anything you'd like to say to your fans?
I would like to say, if anyone's watching this, I'm just overjoyed. I'm really just starting to grow a community of people who, um, listen to my music and appreciate it. And I'm so glad you and I met, Jake, because and like Brian, he's been so fun to talk to as well. Like, I never really, I couldn't have imagined who I would connect with and who I would meet by sharing my music. And so I would just like to say, I'm really excited to see, who I meet, to see what comes of continuing to share my art and music, and to really see like what kind of creative community is built from that. Because I really, I'm definitely a leader in terms of like, being a visionary and having cool ideas to share with people, but I'm also just as excited to hear and see other people's ideas too. So I really consider the kind of Oatpod fan base this kind of like creative sharing community, which, yeah, it's just really exciting to me that anybody would be interested in listening to my music. And it's really, really, it's just kind of that, it's a dream come true.